Okay. Good evening, everybody. We are hopefully you have the book. It's on page 14. If you don't have the book, I can give you some of the text. Is if you have a chumash, you have a chumash. We're going to the beginning of Noach, the second portion of the book of Genesis. We are holding on chapter 6. Chapter 6, verse number 9. Well, the second chapter of the week, the second portion of the week is a portion of Noach, which is one of the amazing stories of the Torah. And it's truly an amazing story in itself. I wonder if God should get the royalties of all the movies that have come out with the story of the flood in Hollywood. But it's surely one of the amazing stories of the Torah, the story of the flood. Torah gives away many chapters and many verses to this story. And therefore, there must be unbelievable things hidden in this story. And there's so much to learn from the Parsha, self-understood. And we're going to pick on this. This is based on a Sikha, a commentary of the Rebbe, and a teaching of the Rebbe, a very deep teaching of the Rebbe, a very deep, a simple teaching of the Rebbe, an important teaching of the Rebbe. And I believe that for Hashgacha Pratis with divine providence, they chose this talk of the Rebbe on this week's Parsha because I believe it is very important to today's time, this lesson that the Rebbe spoke about many, many years ago. But let us start off with the name, the Parsha that's named Noach. Vayoma Hashem leNoach. And we know that last week, the Torah portion, the Torah tells us why his name was Noach, because he will bring consolation to the world. He brings consolation to the world. And if you think about it, in the first verse that you have right over there in front of you, or you have a chumash, you have a Bible, and you open up the verse, it says, Vayoma Hashem leNoach, Ba'ato veis chalatev. I'm sorry, this is 7. The class starts on chapter 7. I'm sorry. Chapter 7, verse number 1. Vayoma Hashem leNoach. God says to Noach, Ba'ato v'chol beis chalateva. You come, you and your whole house to this teva. Ki oischor isa tzadik l'Hashem b'deir hazeh. Because I see that you are righteous from all people that is in the world at this generation. What did God see in Noach so special? The Torah doesn't tell us the beauty of Noach. What was so special about Noach? Where do we find Noach? I understand if the Torah would say before that the people are bad and Noach was good. What was the beauty of Noach? What was so special about Noach that from all the people of his generation? And the truth is that there are those that say that's in the word Noach. Noach, what is the meaning of the word Noach? His name, because it's brought down. The name that you are given by your parents is the name of your DNA. It's the essence of who you are. So if you want to know what Noach was, you can look at his name. And what does the word Noach mean? What is the word Noach? So there's a lot of different translations to the word Noach. Some people say you actually have to turn it around. It means grace. Noach means grace. Chen, grace. Noach means peaceful. It means restful. It means comfort. Meaning, I would just say in general, one of the greatest qualities of Noach was that he was a very calm guy. Noach never got angry. Now, you can imagine Noach in a teva for 365 days stuck with thousands upon thousands of animals. And if you go to the Medrash, you'll learn that Noach didn't sleep by day and didn't sleep by night because he had to take care of all these animals. And we all know some animals eat by day, some animals are nocturnal, they eat by night, and they all needed to be fed in its time. And the Medrash says even a story that the lion got angry at him, he gave him a patch, slapped him. Noach had a rough time in the Teva. He didn't have a happy time in the Teva. But he never, it says in the Medrash, he never got angry once. Noach was extremely calm. He was extremely equilibrium, never angered, and he always was equal calm in his life. And that's what the Eibishter, that's what Matzah Chen Be'enei Hashem. Noach found grace in the eyes of God because he was a very calm person. He never angered. He never got frustrated. Built an ark for 120 years. God told him, I want you to build the ark yourself, you and your 3 sons. This was a humongous ark. Took him, as I said, 120 years. You don't see Noach complaining. You don't see Noach getting angry. Very calm person. And God loves that in his name. So the Chazal say, what does a person, how will God find grace in your eyes? If you will not get angry. If you will not get angry, but even in times of stress and floods, you're going to be able to stay calm. In that way, you're going to find grace in God's eyes. But it's also brought down that why didn't Noach didn't get angry? Why didn't he get angry? And I told those who say because he had bitachon, he had faith. Noach had faith. One of the things that brought about the Mabel was Geneva, was Gezela. People were robbing from each other, cheating one another, out to get one another. Why does cheating and robbing and thievery in all levels of life, whether it's money or cheating a person's mind, being unfaithful, untruthful, it all starts because we don't have bitachon. We think it's in our control. Money is in our control. Power is in our control. That we have a lack of self-esteem is totally, that really is in our control. And why don't we have why do we have a low self-esteem? Because we don't have a bitachon. We don't have faith. We don't have trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that those who say that was Noach's goodness, Matzah Chen, is when you have bitachon. And they take it from the word bitachon. I can't show you how to spell the word bitachon, but bitachon is spelled Beis Tes Ches Vav Nun. Beis Tes Ches Vav Nun. So if you take the word Chen out of the word, out of bitachon, take the Ches and the Nun, you're left with Tes Vav Beis. Toiv Chen. Bitachon. If you're going to have bitachon, if we have bitachon, we will have the goodness of grace. Noach Natzah Chen Be'enei Hashem. Noach found grace in the eyes of God. And when God saw that he had faith and he was calm and he controlled himself and he controlled his anger and his emotions, the Eibishter, God saw grace in that kind of a person. So that's lesson number 1. But the world was full of anger and hate and hatred and destructiveness. And there was a rat race, extremely big rat race in the world at that time. Ultimately, we know what broke the camel's back to bring the flood, Rashi says, was Gezela, robbing from one another, stepping on one another to get money. That was broke the camel's back HaKadosh Baruch Hu, so to say. And the Eibishter was very unhappy that people thought that their parnasa and their livelihood needed to only come through their work, only through their hands, and without any faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When he only needs to come to you, then Chas v'Shalom, you can come about to, God forbid, hurt one another. And that's openly shows the lack of bitachon, the lack of faith that we have in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But let's continue in the text. The Torah says, I start the class over this because I think it's the reasoning to what the next part of the class is going to teach us, and really the crux of this class. The Torah says, continues, we call a behema Torah, from all the pure animals, tikach lach shiva, from all the pure animals you shall take 7. 7 pairs. Ish v'ishtei, a man and his wife. We call behema shaloi Torah, and from all the animals that are not pure, shnayim, take 2 only. Ish v'ishtei, a man and his wife. Gam me'efa shamayim, also from the birds of the heaven. Shiva, zachan, again from the Torah you take 7. To give life to the world. You should know that even though we only eat certain kinds of birds, there's like 6 birds that we accept as kosher that we eat. The truth is, there's more kosher birds than non-kosher birds. We just don't have a Masorah. We don't have a tradition. What's a kosher? How many? We have a Masorah to a chicken, to a dove, to a turkey. Some people actually don't eat turkey. So we have a certain Masorah. What is a kosher bird? but majority of birds out there are kosher. Now it's interesting. What is the meaning? Behema HaTahira, from the pure animal. What was a pure animal? Though the laws of kashrus was given 1,500 years later, more than that, 2,000 years later, the laws of kashrus was given. What means Behema HaTahira? So the Rashi says, HaTahira asida li is Torah lisar, text number 2, 1b. I mean, asida li is Torah lisar. The Torah is talking about the future. The Torah is telling Noach what will be the future. There's going to be kosher animals. There's going to be non-kosher animals. Over here, it doesn't say kosher, non-kosher. He calls it tar. There's going to be tar animals, pure animals, and not pure animals. Lamadnu shalamat Noach Torah. From here, we see that Noach knew the Torah, knew the laws of Torah. 7 pairs, so you might offer some as sacrifice upon leaving the ark. So here, the Torah, in essence, tells us that Noach knew the Torah, called it tzaddik, and he knew what means a sacrifice. He knew what means to bring a sacrifice. He knew that he had to bring a sacrifice from a kosher animal, and he knew what was a kosher animal. That a sacrifice needed to be from a cow and not from a pig, because the Torah here tells him, doesn't say openly what's a behemoth Torah. What doesn't tell him, doesn't say in the pasuk. It says you should take from the Torah, from the pure animals 7. Which were the pure and not pure animals? Doesn't say the Torah. So in essence, God taught him. What is God taught him? The portion of Vayikra. Later on, what's going to be a kosher animal? What's not going to be a kosher animal? So that's also an interesting concept, interesting fact. But what is interesting in the pasuk? The Rebbe underlines something very interesting in this pasuk. The interesting thing in the pasuk is, going back to chapter 7, in the second verse in text number 1a, and which is chapter 7, verse number 2. It says, if you read the verse again, it says, mikol behema hatahira, from every animal which is pure, tika shiva ish v'ishtei, you shall take 7 man, male and female. Umana behema loy tahira, and from an animal that's not from an animal that's not pure, you should take 2. So I'm not going to ask the question, but the question everybody asks is that the verse could have said, Mina behema hatmeya. The verse could have saved more words. The verse could have said, Mina behema hatmeya, from an impure animal. Why do you have to use ashaloi tahira? Is it actually, the Gemara asked the question, it's an 8-letter, extra 8 letters. The Torah uses extra 8 letters not to say it simply. In the behema timeya. And if you look in text number 1 and text number 2, there you'll see what I mean. It says it open when the Torah talks about kosher, not kosher. It says, this you should not eat from a animal that chooses cover fisi pasa as a gomel, like a mala gedu, like a camel, because it brings up its cud, but doesn't have complete cloven hooves. What does it say? Tameya hu lachem. It's impure to you. Very direct statement. Tameya hu lachem. It doesn't say it is not pure. It says tameya. It is impure to you. And so too in the next verse, when it talks about the hyrex, it says it again, tameya hu lachem. It is impure. When it comes to the third verse, our neves, the hair says again, tameya hu lachem. It's impure. And when it comes to the pig, it says the same thing. Tameya hu lachem. It is impure. End of story. Why in Parshas Noach does the Torah add 8 letters when the Torah could exactly say it the way it says in Parshas, over here in Parshas Leviticus? The Torah could have saved. It's enough that the Torah gives such an unbelievable amount of time to this story. The Torah could have saved 8 letters by saying it simply. You should take from the pure animals 7, and you should take from the impure animals, not from that's what's not pure, but the impure animals 2. That's the question that is asked. What is the lesson? Now you might think, what is the difference? What's so important? What's the difference? So Torah 8 more letters. Like, you know what I mean? There's 300,000 letters in the Torah. What's so important if it's going to say an 8 letter more in the Torah that's going to come to an end? So we know that every letter in the Torah is there for a specific reason. Not only every letter in the Torah, as we bring down text number 3, but the Gemara talks even in the Torah. If you ever get called to the Torah, you will see, or you ever see a Torah, you'll see that on top of the letters there are little crowns. Some letters have a crown, and there's like quick questions of why every letter has a crown. So the Gemara says in text number 3, Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, when Moses ascended to the heaven and high, he found the Holy One, so to say, blessed be he, sitting and tying crowns on the letters of the Torah. Eibishter was giving the Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu. He was going to give the Torah to Moses. So he was making the crowns on the letters, telling him exactly where these crowns should be. Moses said before him, Master of the universe, who is preventing you from giving the Torah without these additions? Why do you need the crowns in the Torah? What's the difference? It doesn't change the meaning of the word. It doesn't change anything. So what is the difference if there's no crowns on the Torah? Why does it need to be crowns on the Torah? So God replied, there is a man who is destined to be born after several generations. And Akiva ben Yosef is his name. This is Akiva ben Akiva. he is destined to derive from each and every thorn of these crowns mounds upon mounds of halacha. So Rabbi Akiva, the Gemara says, Rabbi Akiva was doirish every crown. Why it says, why was it put this crown on the Torah? They learned halachas. You have to learn Gemara to see exactly what was the halachas, the laws that Rabbi Akiva learned from the crowns. So most of us look at the letter, look at the word. There's another sage that's brought down the Gemara that learned all the S's. Like, for example, it says, Kabed es avicha v'esimecha. S. These are all extra words. S. You could have said, Kabed avicha v'imecha. There's an S. There was a Tana, there was a great sage who learned, gave great teachings to every S. Every time it said the word S in the Torah, he gave a reasoning and taught a lesson and a halacha to why there's an S. Like it says, he learned Es Avicha. What does Es Avicha teach you? Your father, Es, L'Rabbeis Achicha Gadol. I know this because I'm the youngest in my family, and I was told this teaching over and over again, that I have to honor all my adult siblings, because the Torah says, Es Avicha, your older brother, Es Imecha, your older sister. So basically, I have an obligation as the youngest to honor all my older brothers and older sisters. Pasuk. So it was grinded into me, this S. So that's one of the teachings. That's one of the halachas that the Torah obligates you not only to honor your parents, but to honor your elder siblings. Every letter in the Torah is meduyak. It is there for a reason. Every word of the Torah is there for a reason. As we know, if one letter of the Torah is missing, the whole Torah is puzzle. Not that that portion or that verse is unfit. The whole Torah is puzzle. Every letter in the Torah is there for a reason. So therefore, just to say, oh, extra 8 letters, what do we care? No. The Gemara says there's a great teaching, there's a great lesson from this pasuk. There's a great lesson from this pasuk. And what's the lesson? And that's in your text number 4. This is the lesson. The Amr is the Gemara in Tractate of Psachim. The Gemara says, Amr Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Rabbi Shua ben Levi said, a person should never express a crude matter as a formulation of a crude matter from his mouth. I don't know why they doesn't translate it in English. We learn it from this pasuk. We learn it from this pasuk. As the formulation of the verse was distorted by an additional 8 letters, rather than expressing a crude matter, as it stated, of all pure animals and of animals that are not pure. We learn, Rabbi Shua ben Levi says, we learn from the Torah himself, that the Torah does not want to say a bad word. The Torah is willing to add 8 letters and not say the word tummy. It says that behema she'enenu tahira. Instead of saying the word tummy, which would save 8 letters, the Torah is willing to add 8 letters so that we learn we should talk nicely. We shouldn't say bad things from our mouth. We shouldn't express ourselves negative from our mouth. That's the Gemara. That's the Gemara. Comes the Rebbe and asks a simple question, an open question. And the question is in front of you in text number 5. This is extremely puzzling, this answer of the Gemara. The term tamei, impure, can be found in the Torah more than 100 times. If you want to go, you can Google it, I'm sure, today, and you can find how many times the Torah says tamei. It says it hundreds of times. The laws of impurity, the laws of tzadas, the laws of vessels. There's many times. And we just mentioned the laws of impure animals. The Torah says the word tamei over and over again. So wouldn't it be far more sensible for the Talmud to question this term than repeat it so many times? Why don't you ask the question, Rabbi Shua ben Levi, what are you talking about? Rabbi Shua ben Levi, the Torah, it wants to be careful about not saying a negative term. The Torah says it hundreds of times. That's the Rebbe's question. So Rabbi Shua ben Levi, the Gemara, want to say we learn from here we shouldn't say a crude word. When the Rebbe asks a simple question that we find many, many times, the Torah uses a harsh expression. So to answer this question, let us first think about it for a minute. We know, Baruch Hashem, we live in America, and the First Amendment, we all know the First Amendment, which is freedom of speech. It's the foundation of a democracy, that you have freedom of speech. You're entitled to say anything you want to say. And if you're going to stop people from saying what they want to say, you're going to put people into lack of freedom. And that's why the First Amendment is an important amendment in the Constitution. But we know also, is there a limit to freedom of speech? We all know, like if you scream fire in a theater, can I scream fire in a theater? We know that they can't do that. So we know freedom of speech is allowed as long as it doesn't hurt anybody else. And we all can come to that concept, that freedom of speech should not be allowed if it's going to hurt somebody else. So you're going to scream fire in a theater, in a packed place, you're going to hurt somebody. You're not allowed to scream fire in a theater. So this is the struggle. We struggle until today about freedom of speech. This is a struggle. We're fighting the court. And what is freedom of speech? What am I allowed to say? What I am not allowed to say? What is considered hurting somebody with my speech? And what is considered, don't be so sensitive. Why you have to be so sensitive? So I can't say something, you shouldn't be sensitive, you should be sensitive. So how far do we go? Is it only in fire in a theater, or where you tell somebody, or kill somebody? That's where freedom of speech stops. When does freedom of speech stop? When do you allow to hold freedom of speech? When do you allow it? It's just something we struggle with till today, and it's in the courts. What is the Torah opinion about freedom of speech? What is really the Torah's opinion about a person's freedom to say whatever he wants to say and wherever he wants to say? The truth is, the Torah is Torah emes. Torah is a Torah of truth. So, are you allowed to say every truth? Because it's true. If it's true, I'm allowed to say it. That you cannot handle the truth. You can't handle the truth. It's not my problem. I'm entitled to say the truth. What does the Torah say about that? So we all know the prohibition of lashon hara, evil talk. Lashon hara is evil talk, which is prohibited in the Torah. Most of us don't know, or maybe don't know, that lashon hara is even the truth. I'm not allowed to talk lashon hara, even if it's the truth. Moichi Shemra is talking a false, something that is false. That's a separate prohibition. Saying a lie, talking false about somebody, fake news, that's Moichi Shemra, and that's prohibited in the Torah. Separate prohibition. Lashon hara is talking negative about somebody, even if it's true. You're not allowed to talk about somebody negatively, even if it's true. But what about the truth? Isn't the truth important? Aren't I allowed to say the truth, even though you're going to hurt somebody else? So there's laws. There's laws about it. But let's go to the basic law. We go to the basic law of the Torah in text number 6. The Torah says the law of not talking negative, even the truth, about somebody else. The verse in Vayikra, Leviticus 25:17. You have it in front of you, text number 6. You shall not wrong one man his fellow Jew, and you shall fear God, for I am God your Lord. You're not allowed to hurt another person, whether it's with your hand, your fist, your mouth. You're not allowed to hurt another Jew. So prohibition in the Torah. If you're going to hurt somebody else with your mouth, it's not just the concept of verbal abuse. It is a prohibition in the Torah. You've done an Aveda. I've done an Aveda. I've done a sin. I've done tshuva. Like any other sin I've done. If I ganvid, I got to do tshuva. I got to do tshuva for this Aveda. That I wronged one man with my mouth. The Alter Rebbe, turn to text number 7. The Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch, this is Code of Jewish Laws, not the Tanya, it's a Code of Jewish Law. The Alter Rebbe explained this in this verse. He says, including in the prohibition of Einah is one who speaks of another matter which implies the shortcoming of his fellow. For example, if someone is asked a scholarly question, they should not say to one who is not versed in that field, what do you respond here? You want to embarrass the person. So you turn to the guy. You say, what do you think? You know the guy doesn't know the answer. You know he doesn't know. You're putting him on the spot. Basically for what? To degrade him. Well, what is your opinion on this matter? So that with all similar instances that cause emotional pain, even though he's not embarrassing outright at the moment, and he's not calling him names or embarrassing his fellow in public, right? As it says, what do you think about it? He's just asking you nonchalantly. I didn't know that he didn't know. He was standing there. I wanted to ask him what he thought about it. No, but if I know that he doesn't know, and I basically want to embarrass him, even though I didn't openly say I embarrass him, but that's my intentions. I did an Aveda in the Torah. I did a sin. It goes without saying. The Alter Rebbe continues. I'm reading the continue of the Alter Rebbe in Shulchan Aruch. It goes without saying that one who ridicules another, even if he's only hinting, and even if it's the truth, it falls under the prohibition of wronging his fellow with words. Now, the Torah over here in this pasuk is not just telling you have compassion, be sensitive. No, it's telling you I'm doing an avera. I'm doing a sin. I'm doing an avera. It's not that I should be a better person. I should be a more ethical person. That doesn't say that. It's not a suggestion or a hope. The Torah here says a halacha. The Torah says a pasuk. So this is how far the Torah talks about. Be careful what I say to somebody else. Be careful how I express myself to another person. Now over here, we're not talking about lying, as you see in the next verse. We're talking about the truth. That person is wrong. I am I allowed to, am I allowed to rebuke him? If I'm rebuking him and he's going to be embarrassed, here the Torah says that's a wrong act. That's prohibited. Not it's a wrong act, it's prohibited. When it comes to a lie, God forbid, you have a verse in text number 11. I'm text number 8, I'm sorry. It says, distance yourself from false matters. Don't talk lies. And a pure and an innocent person you shall not kill. Because I will not vindicate a guilty person. And the Chazal, the sages learned from me that saying sheker is killing somebody. That is mamish like murder. So, in essence, the Torah wants a person, even like what I'm saying right now, to be diplomatic. Torah wants a person that I should not be in. I should never, ever, even the truth, to express to my fellow in a way that's going to embarrass him. That's the prohibition in the Torah. It's a beautiful statement over here that is said in the name of the Alter Rebbe in text number 9. There's a saying in the name of the Alter Rebbe. It's forbidden to utter falsehood, that's for sure. Truth, on the other hand, doesn't always be broadcast and publicized from the rooftops. Not every truth needs to be said. Or not every truth, or every truth really needs to be known how to be said. You need to know how to say the truth. Not every truth has to be said the way it is, so to say, even written. When I got smicha for a bonus, where I became a rabbi, I said the story before, maybe some of you heard it. When I got smicha, it's called, you get smicha, you get rabbinic ordination from the four chelkei Shulchan Aruch, from the 4 different parts of Code of Jewish Law, which they test you on. And it took me 2 years to do. And when I got smicha, I was very, very happy and very excited. I came home to my father to tell him that I got smicha. And he asked me, you got smicha on how many books of the Shulchan Aruch? And I told him, you get on the 4 chelkei Shulchan Aruch. He said, oh, they didn't test you on the 5th chelik, on the 5th book? I was like shocked for a second. I said, I didn't know there was a 5th book. He said, yeah, the 5th book is something that you're going to have to learn your whole life. I said, what was that book? And he said, the 5th chelik Shulchan Aruch is called common sense. You actually cannot get tested on common sense. To be a Rav, to be a rabbi, he told me this. To be a Rav, to be a rabbi is not only that you have, the halacha, that you know the law. It's the way you're going to apply the law. And hopefully you're going to learn the 5th book, which is to have common sense. That every law, that when a person comes to you, you also have to have the person that's in front of you. A Rav also needs to take into consideration the person that he's answering the law to. I'll tell you a story that's told about in the world, and I'll tell you a story that happened with me and my father, since we're talking about that, and I learned a lot from him. But a story that's told in the world, where a Yid came to a Rav on Erev Pesach, and he wanted to ask the Rav a question. So he asked the question, he asked the rabbi the question, if milk is kosher to be used at the 4 cups of wine. So the Rav, without even answering the question, took out from his drawer a pile of money and told the Yid to go buy himself the whole Pesach, all his Pesach needs. Why? Because he understood if he's asking the question that he doesn't have, if milk is kosher for the 4 cups of wine, that means he has no meat. That means he doesn't have a suda. He doesn't have the meal. Forget about the 4 cups of wine. If he's asking the 4 cups of wine should be milk, that means he has no meat because he can't eat milk and meat together. So he realized he doesn't have any money for the meal. So he told him, here. He didn't answer the question even. He said, here, take money, go buy yourself meat and chicken and wine. That's common sense. My father, blessed memory, I think I've told this story before. Once I was walking with him towards 770 on a Shabbos morning. I used to walk with him from East Flatbush to Crown Heights. And as we walked up Kingston Avenue, a young lady walked over to him and asked him a question on kashrus, a question about a ladle, putting it into the milk of a ladle, put it into the meat, whatever. A question, and my father said, right now, we're walking up Kingston Avenue, he turned to the lady, said, right now I'm going to, it's a very, very deep question, it's a very hard question, I need to look it up in the Shulchan Aruch, in the Code of Jewish Law, and tonight, could be a call tonight, after Shabbos, and I'll be home with the books, I'll give you an answer. And we walked ahead. I told my father, I said, I'm not a rabbi even. That's an easy question. Why didn't you just tell it the easy question? So my father said that I didn't want to say, because I understood that the husband asked the question. I didn't want to say this easy question, the guy, it's open law and Shulchan Aruch. And then they'll feel bad. They'll feel like, oh, my husband's stupid. It's a stupid question. Every person open up the Code of Jewish Law knows the answer to that question. So therefore, I didn't want that the woman should look on her husband negative. So I told her that's a very deep question, and I need to have my books, and I'll give her an answer later. So now she'll go to her husband and say, wow, you see, you asked a very good question. It's a very deep question, but I book it, needed to have some time to look it up. This very deep question. That's common sense. That's understanding the person that's in front of you, and not just the law, but the way to express the law to make sure that that no person, like I always tell people, no question is a stupid question. Because if there's a stupid question, people will stop asking questions. So there's no question that's a stupid. Every question is an important question, and that's common sense. So therefore, in general, when you go and you're going to say the truth to somebody else, this is the litmus test. You have to ask yourself, okay, I'm going to give you basic principles in even saying the truth. You have a truth, and you're going to tell somebody else the truth. And you have to ask yourself, as you say, who you're saying the truth to. If you're saying it to yourself, you can say it any kind of way you want to say it. But you have to understand, you have to know the audience. You have to know the person that you're talking to. It's important to him, can he handle that truth? The way I'm going to say it to him, can he handle what I'm going to say? So you have to consider the person that you're telling the truth to. You have to also consider the time that you're telling the truth. Is it the right time? Is it the right situation? Is it in front of other people? How am I going to express this truth at this present time? And the most important question you have to ask yourself, is this truth going to resonate in the audience? In the person that I'm telling the truth? Or is it going to have a backlash? It's very important. Very important that the person you're telling the truth has the capability to accept the truth. So again, it's important, as I said in the beginning, important the person, it's important the time, and it's important that the person will accept it. The Rebbe would always say, the Mishnah says, things that come out from the heart enter the heart. So usually if it comes from the heart, if your truth would also be emotional, that it's not only intellectual, but it's also emotional, that you care about the other person you're telling the truth to, then it will usually have a positive effect. Because the other person will feel that you're not being judgmental, you're not trying to put him down, you're trying to really help him. And he'll be willing to want to be helped. But if other people are around, let's say, or he's just not ready to hear it, so then what are you going to gain out of saying the truth? It's not. Then you don't have the fifth Shulchan Aruch, common sense. And that's why in text number 10 it says Shimon ben Noach, Shimon in Ethics of Our Father. It says Shimon, the son of Rabbi Gamliel, the leader of the Jewish nation, Shimon ben Gamliel, he also became the leader. All my life I've raised among the wise. Right? He was brought up in a family of sages and sage from Hillel, generation of leaders. His father, his grandfather, his great-grandfather, great-great-grandfather were all Jewish leaders. The scene. All my life I raised among the wise, and I have found nothing better for the body than silence. The essential thing is not study, but deed. And the one who speaks excessively brings sin. Great lesson in Pirkei Avos. Important lesson in Pirkei Avos. Not everything needs to be said. And the Rebbe would always say that's why the question is, how do you put the two together? The truth, not to give away your truth, but not to hurt somebody else. The Rebbe's expression was usually take a famasim, an appropriate force, with darkei noyim, in a pleasant manner. That means that you need some time to express the truth, but you're not there to take away the other person's space, not there to crush another human being, and neither should the other person feel that you're there to crush them. Therefore, it's a difficult thing to say the truth, to rebuke somebody, because it's a mitzvah Torah. There's a mitzvah Torah to rebuke somebody. If you see somebody doing bad, to rebuke him. But it says, if you're going to rebuke him and he's going to get worse, then maybe you shouldn't rebuke him. You're allowed to rebuke him if you know for sure that it's going to resonate with him, that he's going to accept your rebuke and he'll become better. Because if not, you shouldn't have rebuked him. You should have kept silent. So here we have two things, two pillars in this concept, the pillar of truth and the pillar of another human being. That you shouldn't hurt another human being. And these two pillars need to come together. These two pillars need to come, that there is some kind of unity between these two concepts. And the Rebbe in essence says, that's the lesson of the Torah. That's the real lesson of the Torah, where sometimes the Torah doesn't use a negative word, and sometimes it uses a negative word. Tummy. So let's learn text number 11. The explanation is the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, when dealing with language that comes in a halachic context, then the ruling must be verbalized in its clearest word, even if the words are crude in nature, so that the halachic decision will be crystal clear. So when it comes to when the Torah wants to tell you what is kosher and what is non-kosher, what is pure and what is impure, Torah says explicitly. A pig is tummy. A camel is tummy. And so too other times, as it says hundreds of times, where the Torah mentions tummy, it says it clearly. Now we understand why the majority of cases the Torah employs the word tummy. The benefit of brief language overrides using clean language. It's important to be direct. Only with regard to stories is it fitting that impure and the like should be written in a manner of distorted verse. When the Torah over here in this week's portion was not giving the law of what's a kosher animal, what's not a kosher animal. Doesn't say it in the Torah which is a kosher animal, what's not a kosher animal. The Torah is telling us a story that happened with Noah. And God told Noah who was a kosher, why was a kosher animal, was not a kosher animal. So over there, the Torah, in essence, changes the words and adds an extra 8 letters, not to say a derogatory word. So therefore, this rabbi in text number 12 says, some halachic authorities have adopted a custom that when they issued a ruling about an animal, rendering it treif, they were carefully to use the polite term, it's not kosher, to avoid uttering the term treif. I asked if that's an appropriate custom. So he said, in my humble opinion, it's incorrect to do so, as it leads to mistakes. Sometimes the inquirer may not hear the beginning of the word, and the word it's not, and only hear the word kosher alone, and they will assume it's kosher. The result is they will be misleading people in their rulings. Therefore, when you come to a Rav, and you ask him if something's kosher or not kosher, he should say not kosher. This is not kosher. We're not talking about we're not talking about politics. We're not talking about philosophy. Is this chicken kosher or not? And the answer needs to be from the Rav, it's not kosher. End of story. Anything else, in every other topic, person should be careful not to express himself in a negative way. He should say extra words. If he has to express himself, he should figure out how to say extra words, put extra words and extra words to, in essence, buffer his statement. There's no need to use crude words and harsh words in any other conversation. You know, we find, for example, you can call a cemetery by Jews, you can call 2 names. You can call Beis HaKvaros, a place of burial. But most of us call it Beis HaChaim, a house of life. You can call a hospital a Beis Cholim, a house of sick, or you can call it Beis Refuah, a house of healing. Why would you? Most of us call it Beis HaChaim. I'm going to the Beis HaChaim. I'm going to the place of living. Everybody knows when you say you're going to the Beis HaChaim, you're going to the cemetery. You know that when you're going to the hospital, you're going to call it a base. You're going to call it Beis Refuah, a house of healing. I told this many times to many people. I was by the Rebbe's Farbrengen for many years. Start by his Farbrengen. He never said the word death. Never mentioned the word death. He would say, not living. It was not a question halacha, it was a speech. He was talking in philosophy. He didn't want to say the word death. He would say the opposite of life. Not to say the word death. So that was a conscious decision on the Rebbe, not to use the word, a negative word. That why could he, even though it's an extra word, the opposite of life is death is one word, and the opposite of life is more words. But the Rebbe didn't want to say death. And there are many stories of the Rebbe on this concept. The Rebbe we know, we'll see in the next statement, where the Rebbe spoke about a word that today it's already politically incorrect to say this word. But the Rebbe spoke about it years before it became politically incorrect. And that was the Disahi you have in text number 13. The Rebbe's letter, the Rebbe wrote this to the major conflict of Jewish communities. And in that time was the needs of the Jewish retards. It was an organization. That was the name. The needs of Jewish retarded. Today, it's not politically correct to say that word, retard. And the Rebbe, this was written in the early years of 40. Oh, the date is 741. This was written in 1980. With the Rebbe wrote, he wrote to this organization with regard to the Jewish retard people. I prefer some such term as special people. Why would you give them a derogatory name? Why would you use a derogatory word? Not simply as an euphemism, but because it would be more accurately reflect their situation. They're special. We're normal, they're special. Especially in the view, the fact that in many cases, the retardation is limited to the capacity to absorb and assimilation knowledge, while in other areas, they may be quite normal or even above average. The Jewish identity factor is even more important, not only per se, but also for its therapeutic value. So the Rebbe openly writes to this organization, he says, change your name. You're labeling people. You're putting them down. You're giving them a label. Take the label away. Call them special people. We know that this was the Rebbe's attitude, because the Rebbe in 1976, when a group of IDF soldiers came to visit the Rebbe, they all came in wheelchairs. A famous story. There's actually a video of it. With this group of IDF soldiers came to America. They were all in wheelchairs, and they were visiting New York. They got a trip to New York after the war, the Yom Kippur Milchama, and they were labeled as disabled. And the Rebbe greeted them. They prayed with them together, mincha, and then he spoke to them, and he said, "I don't like the word disabled. I don't think you're disabled. I'm going to call you Mitziyanim, exceptional people. You're exceptional people. You're exceptional. You stood up for another person. You stood up for the Jewish nation. You lost something for the sake of others. How can we call you disabled? You're unbelievable. You actually was not a statement, not just we're ready to give something for the nation. We're ready to give something for another person. You did it. So why would we label you disabled? And if God took away your hand or took away your foot or your feet, God forbid, then the Abish tells you, I'm telling you, you're still a human being and you'll have great opportunities. And then he coined it. He said, you should be called exceptional people. And get rid of the word disabled. Why use a derogatory word? That was in essence what the Rebbe says is a teaching of the Torah, and what the Gemara means. That when it comes to halacha, you're coming to ask a question in Jewish law, you say it the way it is, because the person needs to know. He comes to the rabbi. He's not coming to. He needs to know if it's kosher or not kosher. But every other language, every other words a person should say, even the truth, he should figure out how to say it in a way that it's not derogatory, that it's not hurtful, it is not judgmental, it's not putting somebody else down. But even if he has to say the truth, he's in essence saying the truth so that the other person will listen and become better. The other person will realize he's not saying the truth to put him down. He's saying the truth to uplift him. And if you cannot do that, then better not to say it at all. This was a sikha that Rebbe said many, many years ago. You see it, how important this lesson of the Torah is today. How we live in a time where people put each other down for whatever reasons it might be, whether it's political, emotional, financial. There's so many reasons that we talk derogatory to another person because they don't believe like you, they don't think like you. Should you wear a mask? Shouldn't wear a mask? All these stupid things that we're going through today. And the Abishah gave us a challenge, I believe, in these things, and even the political arena. So we'll see how people respond. How people respond. Are you gonna even if you believe in one party and you think that is the emes, that is the truth, and it might be the truth, but the other person doesn't think it's true. Does he lose his right to believe in that truth? And if I want to try to get him to do the truth, should I put him down and call him, oh, you're the terrible person, you're the most wicked person if you go against my way of thinking? That's the pasuk. That is an aveda. That's the lesson. That's an aveda. It's not this, oh, you're not an ethical person. It's not, you should have compassion. No. The Torah says, you're not allowed to do that. Even if it's the truth. You're not allowed to do that. You want the other person to come on your side, explain it to him. Show him compassion. Package it right. Package the truth right. Or as the Alter Rebbe said, not every truth needs to be screamed out from the roof. Not every truth needs to be said. It's not a halachic question that person came to ask you. The person came to ask you a general question, a general philosophical question. I don't know. What is today you can't even say what is your political feelings. You can't even say anything like that anymore today because everything becomes a fight and everything becomes an emotional struggle. It shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be that way. We should learn how to talk to each other. We should learn how to express things to one another, especially when it comes to these things that we discuss and we have discussions and we have different opinions and we have different philosophies and different ways of life and we think differently. And I'm not here to crush you and to tell you you're wrong. And if you believe in this philosophy, you're destroying the world, you're anti-Semite, you're this, and all these words that we use against each other. And I see it every day on the Facebook. Sad. I think the point of this class, and it's beautiful to learn that it's an aveda, simply a sin. Even if it's a truth, it's simply an aveda. It's a sin to do it in such a kind of fashion. It's not the right way. It's not what God wanted from this world. Noach Motzachein. This week is called Parshas Noach. Why? Because Noach was calm. He didn't get angry. He didn't get frustrated. He showed grace. He showed to be calm. He showed the concept of what means true grace in the world. I think in a way, we should all learn how to be a little bit more chen, how to be a little bit more graceful, and show another person compassion, love, understanding. Give the other person that space, and he will show you what it means to have that chen. Noach cursed his son, and I see somebody wrote at the end, Noach cursed his son. That is if you know the whole medrash, what his son did to him. So his son hurt him physically, and then he cursed his son. Okay, so that's the whole different story. Somebody hurts you, then you take him, then he needs to be taken to court. You can't say somebody that hurts you that you can hug him and tell him, do it again. That's not the point. If somebody hurts you, he needs to be taken to court and needs to be punished. Noach was done a terrible thing by Chum, was done a terrible thing to him, physically a terrible thing to him, and Noach cursed him. Correct. That's the repercussions of doing something that is physically hurtful to somebody else. We're not talking about that in this class. If somebody tells you something and that's hurtful, that's a sad situation. This is a very sad situation that we cannot talk to each other anymore, and we cannot express our opinions to somebody else it becomes extremely hurtful. Because first of all, maybe I'm not expressing it right, and therefore you just can't express anything anymore. Or maybe the person that I'm expressing to doesn't either have space for another person's a philosophy, another person's space in life. We're not talking here about somebody hurting somebody else. If somebody hurts somebody else, yes, he should be punished. Physically hurt somebody else, he should be punished for what he's done. I wish you all a great night. It's a great. This is a lesson of the Rebbe to learn how to speak to one another and how to respect one another. And we learned from the Torah itself, who added an extra 8 letters, not to say a derogatory word, not to say a derogatory word. So we should all have, whether you got the 4 levels of Shulchan Aruch, 4 books of Shulchan Aruch, we should all surely have the 5th Shulchan Aruch, common sense to one another. Have a beautiful and great evening. I want to mention Thursday, there's a great class, the continuation of the class of Mashiach is going to be this Thursday at 10 a.m. To the same place. If you want a book, we also have the books. So you can have a book. Please call the office tomorrow, 487-2934. You can get a book, pick it up. It's a great class. It's four Thursdays. It's continuation in learning about the coming of Mashiach. And especially that ever wanted that every Jew should learn about the coming of Mashiach. Have a great evening. I hope you enjoyed the class. And we'll continue next week, Tuesday at 7:30. Pashas Lech Lecha, same place, same time. I wish you all a wonderful and beautiful night.